What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new episode. This is going to be a really good one because we're going to be talking all about fat loss trends, fat loss stalls, and just all the fat loss facts that you guys need to know to be successful on your fat loss journey. Coach Joe here with Heartletics.com. And today we're going to be just diving into some of the information that we feel like is valuable. So myself, Coach Mark, and Coach Jimmy is going to be kind of going over this PowerPoint presentation to once again give you guys just not only motivation, but also support and encouragement, whether you're a member inside of our, Heartletics coaching program right now, or you're somebody from the outside listening in, or you're just somebody that is struggling and you just need some sense of support and motivation. That is what today's intentions are with the podcast. So let me go ahead and do a quick little screen share here. Cool. And Mark, can you see this okay?
Yep, absolutely.
Beautiful. All right, let me get my face out of the way. Perfect. Okay. So for starters, hey, if you guys are on the outside and you guys are listening for the very first time, welcome to the Heartletics podcast. We do have a completely free fat loss guide that anybody can download over at heartletics.com. Just going over our 7 essential fat loss habits for success. That is truly what we teach our members and find out to be most successful for them on their fat loss journey when it comes to creating sustainable habits. So go over at heartletics.com. You guys can check that out. Now, today's presentation, who this is going to be for, basically anybody that's struggling to burn body fats, but also it's for anybody that's just looking for education on fat loss, whether they want to know how it works scientifically, how it works from their own perspective. Maybe they have a loved one or a family member that's struggling to lose body fat and they're looking out for them just because there are some health risks when it comes to having high body fat percentages. Hey, this is going to be great for just giving you guys that education. And then lastly, for anybody that needs some motivation, we know at the end of the day that maybe not seeing the results that you want is the best feeling in the world, right? You want to see the numbers, especially if you've been crushing it all week long and you're expecting to see the number on the scale go down at the end of the week. Well, hopefully this episode is just going to give you some support and motivation. Coach Mark, why don't you kind of break down and talk a little bit more about fat loss compared to weight loss and how it's different?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some people, get a little too hung up on, weight loss versus fat loss, right? That number on the scale versus the actual body fat percentage. And one way to think of this is, right, if you go weigh yourself before you go to bed and then weigh yourself in the morning, you can see a swing of like 5 to 10 pounds. Clearly that's not, a loss of body fat. You're not losing that overnight. So, that weight itself is, kind of a variable that can change, throughout the day. And it's not an indicator of the percentage of body fat that you're carrying. It's important, to take that number into account and not just the number on the scale, because 1 pound of muscle, right, is like 4 times smaller than 1 pound of fat because of the density. And that's, an important thing to keep in mind. You can drop, weight quickly by losing water weight, but that's not like a real indicator of fat loss. And you're kind of just not really making progress. It's just a temporary loss. As far as fat loss, right, when you actually lose fat, that's when you see actual increases to your health, your fitness, etc. And that's really where you're going to see a positive difference as opposed to the artificiality of the number on the scale.
Yeah. And let's go in next, Mark, about, some of the risks about, having higher body fat percentages.
Yeah, high body fat percentage, leads to a lot of medical issues, including high blood pressure, right? Because there's greater force needed now to move the blood through your body. Heart disease, which is, can be subsequent to the high blood pressure, but also, from abnormal levels of blood fats, glucose levels, things like lipids, HDL, all of that. It's all kind of part and parcel of that higher body fat percentage. And when it comes to something like heart disease, right, just losing like 5 to 10% of your body fat can lower that risk factor. So it's amazing how much of a difference as far as heart disease that plays a big part in strokes. That increase in blood pressure and other factors can lead towards a higher risk of strokes. Sleep apnea, another condition that's caused by higher body fat. And that can raise your risk, right? So the high body fat can raise the risk of sleep apnea. Sleep apnea can raise the risk of other illnesses like type 2 diabetes. It also feeds back into the heart disease. fatty liver disease, right, where fat builds up in your liver. And, even like cancer, there's an increased rate of cancer for people with higher body fat percentages. And of course, kidney disease, because your kidneys can't filter the blood like they should, obesity, right, higher fat percentage raises the risk of diabetes, high blood pressure, and all of that are common causes of kidney disease. So, and then even if you don't have those particular factors, just the actual higher fat body percentage can promote kidney disease and quicken its progress. So all that is kind of the risk of too high of a body fat percentage. But there is, the detrimental effect of having too low a body fat percentage as well, right? If your body fat percentage is too low, you can have problems with fat soluble vitamin deficiencies, right? So the vitamin deficiencies that are the vitamins, excuse me, that are soluble in fat, right? You may have issues with those because you don't have enough fat. Energy levels are going to plummet. You're going to be cold. Your workouts, right, are not going to have the same intensity. You're going to be hungry. It can lead to low testosterone, illnesses, crankiness, brain fog. So it's important to look at both sides of that, right? You don't want to have high body fat percentage, but you also don't want to be below, the recommended numbers either.
Yeah, I love that. And I like how you put also that, having low body fat percentages too, like there's some danger to that. Your body needs fats, right? Your brain needs fat, your organ needs fat, everything, right? And when you cut down way too much, I mean, think about it, your body literally think it's dying, right? And so there's a lot of health concerns and most importantly, sanity too. I know that if I'm cutting for a photo shoot and I get underneath, let's say 10% body fat, I'm getting closer to 7 and 6. Life sucks. Like just because I look good with my shirt off and I got abs, life is not fun. Like it sucks because I have to be so pinpoint focused on my nutrition, my cardio, my training, everything has to be completely dialed in. And I almost have to be like OCD. And it's not fun. It's not enjoyable, especially like, I love having like date night with my wife, having sushi or, getting some donuts with my son. I can't do that when I'm cutting weight for a photo shoot or something like that, because you have to be so focused on dialed in. And then on the flip side, right, the higher body fat, one of the things here that aesthetics too, for being over 30% body fat, some of the guys that apply for our coaching program trying to lose weight and lose body fat, they often tell us all the time that it lacks with self-esteem, lacks with self-confidence, just we hear quote unquote, right? Joe, I got the man boobs. I got the muffin top. I got the beer belly. I just want to get rid of it. Right. And so we know from a perspective that also kind of, affects them negatively where they kind of feel a little bit, emotionally depressed, not liking the way that they look and feel. Our job really is, and this is where we've seen lots of success, is helping guys really get into those healthy body fat ranges. And I would say that's anywhere from 10% all the way to max 20%. With most guys that struggle with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, even type 2 diabetes, helping them get underneath 20% body fat seems to be one of the key focuses to helping them get off their medications. But once again, that, 10 to 15, 18, 20% max, that's the sweet spot here where we're looking to help get guys to. If they can hover around that 12 to 15% and learn how to, stay there and when to make adjustments for their body fat to, depending on the seasons of life, whether it's like the holiday season or summertime when it's cutting down, they're going to be in a good sweet spot here. And before we get into tips about, some of these trends and when and how to make adjustments to better aid in that, let's first go into some of the mistakes. And I know a lot of guys have made countless mistakes when it comes to burning body fat. Coach Jimmy, do you mind kind of breaking down this like one by one? And maybe why don't you kind of tell a little bit about your story also? Because some of these things that we're going to go into detail, you actually struggled with before signing up as a client.
Yeah, absolutely. And these are mistakes we all make. You know, I think everybody makes these mistakes, including myself, anyone watching. I'm sure you've made these mistakes. I think the first biggest mistake we all make is, you know, not eating enough because we think calories in versus calories out, right? And, you're right. You do, to lose weight, you do need a calorie deficit. We just don't know how to do it the proper way. So we say, oh, I won't eat enough. I'll lower my calories to barely nothing, and I'll lose weight. And you will lose weight. You like Mark, go off of what Mark was saying. You'll lose muscle, you'll lose water, and you'll lose some fat. But at some point, that's going to stall. And the reason that is because your body goes into starvation mode. It's not getting enough food. It's not getting enough fuel, and it's a defense mechanism. Your body has, it wants to store the fat to conserve energy. It just shuts down your metabolism, shuts down to a crawl, and your body starts to burn calories as slow as possible. So, and I think we get in that cycle to where we just lower our calories, and we're not losing weight. We get frustrated, and then you start binge eating, and then you pack the fat on, and it's just a vicious cycle that keeps repeating itself. And I did that for years to where I was 430 pounds. And I think the second biggest mistake would be, these fad diets. And I'll just a couple of them, that I have experience with, I'll go over. One would be intermittent fasting. And, just what I talked about, the calories, not eating enough calories. When you're fasting, you're not eating. I would fast all day and just eat dinner, one meal a day. So obviously, I wasn't getting enough food for my body, especially the size I am. So my metabolism pretty much, was shot when, when I learned from Coach Joe what I was doing to myself. And on top of that, you really don't have any energy because you're not putting any fuel in your body, and you're tired all the time. So it's really not the best way to try to lose fat. And then the other one would be low carb, doing low carbs. Yeah, you may lose some weight, and the same things will happen that I just talked about. But you're also, your body needs carbs. It needs it to make insulin, testosterone, and all these hormones. It's very important. And the less of these hormones that are made from your body, your metabolism shuts down. It's just the same thing going back and forth. So, and the third, which leads to that, is I think, a big mistake is not getting support. And part of that support is getting knowledge from somebody that knows what they're doing. I think too many times we think we can do things on our own, and do it on our own, and we look for all these different things that people say work, and it's just like Coach Joe always says, over analysis paralysis. And it's just to the fact where we're spinning, we don't know what to do, and we give up. So we need support. We need somebody that knows how to show us the right way to do things for our body. And then the second part of that would be having the support from people, that are going through the same thing that you're going through, that are there for you when you're down and can pick you up and just have your back. And I think having all that is a recipe for success and sustainability.
Yeah, beautifully said, man. And I think what you said is it really stuck out about the support is that, when guys they have a hard time asking for help. I feel like everybody does, including myself, right? It's just like we got these egos, and especially as guys, like we think like we can do it all, right? We carry the weight of the world on our shoulders, but it's just like we're not made for that, right? We're made to use our resources, and especially when we live in such an abundant world where, it's just anybody's willing to help out. It's just we got to make sure we have to put the ego to the side and ask for that help. So yeah, I love what you said. The three biggest fat loss mistakes: one, not really understanding about calories, and typically the calories in versus calories out. Like, yeah, sure. Well, as a thermodynamics 101, hey, I know all about that, right? Getting certified in nutrition. But at the end of the day, if you're not eating enough, your body's not getting enough macronutrients and micronutrients to actually have proper fuel. A car needs gas in it to get from point A to point B. So does your body. I think a lot of guys also tend to just look out to see what's out there, right? These different fad diets, whether it's low carb, whether it's fasting, whatever the case may be, kind of like one foot in, one foot out, where they're never really devoted to something, and that something typically is something that works best for them. And that's the problem with diets out there, is it requires you to restrict something, maybe your favorite foods, maybe your favorite alcoholic beverages, where it's just, hey, you have to follow this and you have to make it fit into your lifestyle. And once again, anybody can do anything when life's easy, but when life throws you curveballs, hey, that's typically when people get stressed out, they go back to their old ways. And having that support to help you out helps out on both ends, gives you that knowledge, but then also at the same time, that sense of community with other guys, going there right along for the mission. Let's go next into, so you're probably wondering like what adjustments to make then, I don't want you guys to think this is all rocket science because it's really not. But at the end of the day, there is some specifics that come apart to this. Going off this, right? Lowering calories, changing macros, more activity, all of these can potentially work into helping somebody make adjustments when it comes to losing more body fat. But I also kind of break things down and ask you guys this. At what point does it come to, you can't lower any more calories because you're not getting enough protein, carbs, and fats in to actually, maintain your muscle or to have energy or whatever the case may be. So I think knowing properly on when to cut out calories is very important. And then also, with that being said, there's a phrase out there, give somebody an inch and they take a mile. Making a calorie adjustment doesn't need to be this, hey, let's just cut out 500, 600, 800, maybe even 1,000 calories right off the bat, just because you want to see the number on the scale go down. Small little adjustments move the needle. Same thing when it comes to changing around the macros. As much as we love talking about protein, you can't just not eat any carbs and not eat any fats. Fats are essential for the body and carbs are great for testosterone, metabolism, and most importantly, energy levels. And so knowing when to make adjustments, and sometimes I'll say like this, we might increase protein for somebody and then switch things around where we just change the numbers around, going right back to decrease that protein, increase the carbs. And that small little adjustment was enough to shift their metabolism in the right adjustment. And then lastly, more activity. More activity is great because you're adding something in rather than taking something out, like cutting out calories. But hey, if you're somebody that's very busy and you don't have a lot of time, it might be hard to consistently do a whole nother workout or get more steps in or more form of, NEATs, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So it's knowing properly on when to do all this and how to do all that. But with that being said, putting all this aside, this is the biggest reason why we're doing this, presentation, is that way you guys have reassurance on how body fat trends actually work. And one of the biggest things out there is that guys lack patience, right? Patience is a virtue. If anybody has any kids out there, you probably tell them that all the time, right? Like patience, 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 patience. I know I definitely do with my son. And it's just like, you got to have patience when it comes to body fat. So knowing when to make adjustments and how to make adjustments is great, but also just the realistic expectations that, week over week, you don't just see the number on the scale go down. You don't just lose body fat constantly. There's going to be plenty of weeks where, you lose weight, but then gain weight, lose weight, gain weight. Even some weeks where you hit a little plateau. And what we always see is that life typically tends to test us, right? There's going to be weeks where you're going to be crushing your workouts, crushing your nutrition. Everything's great. And you're expecting to see those big results at the end of the week. And then typically you don't. And that's when it kind of sucks the most, where it's like, oh man, I thought I did all the right things. But remember, having patience is the name of the game here. So what we typically see is 3 different types of body fat trends. And I'll kind of go over this with you guys. So for each different example here on the right-hand side, let's just use the example of somebody starting off at 250 pounds, 30% body fat, and they want to lose 50 pounds and they want to get down to 15% body fat, a healthy range of body fats. Well, hey, some weeks you're going to lose some weight. Some weeks you're going to hit a little plateau. Some weeks you're going to lose some weight, hit a little plateau. Some weeks you're going to lose some weight, hit a little plateau. And it's very common, and the reason why we want you guys to understand this is because, once again, at the end of the day, going back to this first photo right here, you're not going to lose weight every single week. And so sometimes when you hit that little plateau, there is no adjustment that needs to be made. I mean, honestly, I think when guys start to see that they're hitting this quote unquote plateau where they're not seeing the number on the scale go down after 1 week, it doesn't matter. Like, it's not considered a plateau. In my opinion, when you're not seeing trends, right, in form as body fats, energy levels, weights, progress photos, when you're not seeing results in those aspects after anywhere from 3 to about 5 weeks, that's when it's safe to say you're in a plateau. And a lot of factors have to go into this, because I think most importantly, guys have to understand consistency is key, right? That means being consistent with the nutrition, being consistent with your training. Every aspect comes into play. And knowing that, hey, you might just have a week where your metabolism is adjusting a little bit, or there's other factors that go into play that, we're not diving in too much, but like stress and sleep, all that has a factor where, 1 week you might be just stressed out, and the following week, hey, you might have, less stress at work or less stress at home or whatever the case may be, or maybe you got some more sleep in even, and that's going to help see that number go down without even making any adjustments with calories, activity, or macronutrients. So remember, patience, but understanding how your body fat specifically works. And this is the importance of, tracking, not just, food logs and training, but tracking your body stats, tracking your progress photos, all that stuff, so we can see those trends. The second one, this is very common actually, and this is where guys get discouraged a lot. And that is they'll lose some weight, gain some weight, lose some weight, gain some weight, lose some weight, gain some weight, lose some weight, gain some weight. But if you look at the, overall scheme of all this, they still consistently see that number go down. Now, was it week over week? Absolutely not. But the weeks where they gain some weight, did they just throw in the weight towel and go back to their old ways? Absolutely not. They stayed consistent. They stayed, patience obviously is a virtue, right? Sticking with the program and sticking with things to see it out. And it just helps them as far as like, going to their end goal as far as their results. And the last one is kind of like myself, where I will lose some weights, I hit this plateau, and then I might even gain some weight. And then, stay consistent with everything, lose a whole bunch of weight, hit a little plateau, gain some weight, lose some weight. And it's a trend that's not fun at all. And this is why we always tell guys that, hey, at the end of the day, don't just go off the number on the scale. Don't just go off the body fat. You want to look into other factors of progression, which we're going to talk about next. But most importantly, especially if you're somebody and you notice this about your body fat, you got to stay consistent at the end of the day. But like we just kind of mentioned here, that the most important signs of progression is first and foremost, how do you look and how do you feel? If I'm walking down the street, and let's say me and my son are, going for a nice walk. It's a hot summer day. I got my shirt off, right? And somebody walks by, right? And let's say somebody gives me a compliment, like, oh man, what is the first thing that they're going to say if they're going to give me a compliment? Are they going to say, oh man, hey, how much do you weigh? Or, oh man, what's your body fat percentage at? Like, no, they're going to say, oh man, you look great. You look good. And so at the end of the day, like we have to understand those trends as far as how do you look, right? And so how do you judge that? Is that with your progress photos? Is that with maybe, seeing the clothes are fitting a little bit, better on you? Maybe you're seeing some more definition in the mirror or whatever the case may be. And I know this is a hard thing for guys to do because typically they love to just pinpoint their flaws when they look at themselves in the mirrors every single morning, when instead we have to be looking at how are we actually progressing and how do we look? That's a big confidence factor too, most importantly. And the second part is, how do you feel? This is something here that we want to strive for, right? More energy, more strength. If we notice that, let's say somebody is not progressing with, the number on the scale going down or even their body fat going down, but hey, they're constantly hitting new PRs in the gym. They're feeling more, energized. They're way more stronger in the gym. They're not at a plateau by any means, because guess what? Odds are they're probably putting on some lean muscle tissue, and their metabolism is turning and burning. And that's hence why they feel more energized. And then lastly, right? Like, what is enjoyable and what is sustainable? And I think this is something that a lot of people forget about when it comes to progressing and seeing that progression happen in your own body fat. They got to realize here, this is that like what we focus on at Heartletics is teaching sustainable habits. We're not telling guys to cut out carbs. We're not telling guys to avoid their alcohol. We're not telling guys to stop eating fast food or stop eating, McDonald's or donuts or anything like that. It's our job as coaches to create sustainable plans for everybody that gets updated week over week, where it's also enjoyable, to where if let's just say like somebody's not seeing progression, right? After a few weeks, maybe they are even in a plateau where it's like, hey, is this something that you can actually consistently do though long term? I like how Coach Brett, he always talks about like this. He's like, it's not a diet. Like this is something completely different. It's a lifestyle transformation. It's a lifestyle change. And where, at the end of the day, if you're enjoying every second of the progress, enjoying every step of the program, it's just fun because it gets your mind focused off of just seeing the results. And you realize here that it's just like, hey, you're just learning how to be more consistent with becoming the best version of yourself. And guess what? As long as you're consistent, that's why we always send over these little wristbands to everybody when they get signed up. This is consistency is key. That's the true name of the game here, is that, you might have days of the week where, or weeks where you don't see progression. You might have weeks where you do see progression, but regardless, you just got to stay consistent. All the guys that you see here in these photos, right? And there's hundreds of them more, right? It's just like, they didn't give up. And that's what matters the most. And that's what we always preach about. Whether your goals is to burn body fat, whether your goals is to, start your own business, whether your goals is to, whatever the case may be when it comes to achieving anything that you want in life, you just have to be consistent, right? You just don't give up. And eventually it's all going to work out in the end. Just keep on figuring out, when to make adjustments, how to make adjustments, and, when to pivot, so to speak. And as long as you don't give up, you will always have success and achieve your goals. And to finish things off with the podcast is that if anybody is looking for any extra resources, as mentioned in the very beginning, we do have that free fat loss guide that goes over these 7 essential fat loss habits for success as to what we teach our members at Heartletics. And then lastly, the second part is the YouTube page, right? At Heartletics on YouTube, just type that in. Constantly posting our podcast episodes there, constantly posting new informative videos to not just give you guys the motivation, not to give you guys the inspiration, but also just the support and encouragement of knowing what to do to better aid and support and helping you guys on your fat loss journey. And then lastly, if you want to speak with either Coach Jimmy, Coach Mark, or even myself, schedule a free assessment call. See if what we can do at Heartletics can maybe be, suitable for you at helping you reach your goals. And with that being said, guys, this has been the Heartletics podcast with Coach Joe, Coach Jimmy, Coach Mark. And as always, we'll talk to you guys next time. Peace out, Girl Scouts.